British government officials say they'll never allow safe passage to a man who's of interest to a number of countries. Julian Assange is trying to avoid extradition to Sweden. The founder of WikiLeaks has been holed up for 2 months in the Ecuadorian embassy in London. Ecuador has granted him asylum, but he faces arrest if he leaves embassy grounds.
If it was as easy to arrest Julian Assange as his supporters, then there wouldn't be a diplomatic battle between Britain and Ecuador. The scuffles outside the country's embassy are but a small sideshow to the wider extradition arguments surrounding an Australian citizen wanted for questioning in Sweden, probably wanted by the United States, but not facing any charges in Britain. Assange hasn't been seen publicly since entering the embassy 2 months ago to seek asylum, a request which the South American state has now agreed to.
We're convinced that Mr. Assange's rights have been undermined during the inquiry. Ecuador knows that he doesn't have the due protection and aid from the state where he is a citizen. From communications with Britain, Sweden and the US, it is inferred that those governments would not respect the international treaties and conventions.
But the British government rejects Ecuador's move and remains determined to send Assange to Sweden.
The British authorities are under a binding obligation to extradite him to Sweden. We must carry out that obligation, and of course we fully intend to do so. The Ecuadorian government's decision this afternoon does not change that in any way, nor does it change the current circumstances in any way. We remain committed to a diplomatic solution that allows us to carry out our obligations as a nation under the Extradition Act. We will not allow Mr. Assange safe passage out of the United Kingdom, nor is there any legal basis for us to do so.
We have summoned the ambassador because what has happened today when Ecuador has granted Mr. Assange asylum. We are strongly opposing this reaction of the Swedish legal process and also the legal cooperation between two European states. Added to that, we are quite upset by the remarks made on the Swedish legal system, accusing it of being politicized. There has been a lot of talk about him being at risk of having the capital punishment in the United States. And Sweden, neither Britain, will extradite a person who is at risk of having the capital punishment.
Protesters in New York show their support for Julian Assange. His case has become an international tug-of-war. Meanwhile, in Washington, Ecuador reiterated its position at an Emergency Organization of American States meeting. Its ambassador was backed by the majority of the members when she said it would be unlawful for British authorities to raid the Ecuadorian embassy in London.
Any authority from the hosting country cannot burst into a mission's premises without greatly violating obligations of international commitments established in treaties among civilized nations.
Assange is wanted for questioning by Sweden over rape and sexual assault claims. His lawyer there thinks the asylum decision could actually end the standoff.
That means that the arrest warrant from Sweden can no longer be affected by Great Britain. In its turn, it means that the Swedish prosecutor, in my opinion, must change her attitude and immediately go to London and interrogate Julian Assange at the embassy of Ecuador.
Assange fears he could ultimately be sent to the US, which is furious over his website leaking secret cables. WikiLeaks says he'll give a live statement in front of the embassy on Sunday.
So what are the roots of this row? Back in 2010, Julian Assange's WikiLeaks published thousands of top-secret US military logs and diplomatic cables. Also that year, sexual assault allegations were made by 2 women in Sweden, allegations that Mr. Assange has consistently denied. In November, Sweden issued an international arrest warrant. A British court ordered his extradition. In June, Mr. Assange took refuge inside Ecuador's London embassy and applied for asylum. For now, Ecuador and Britain are both standing their ground. It's not clear how this standoff will end, or how long Mr. Assange, the self-styled champion of freedom, will stay inside this most genteel of prisons.
Now, earlier we spoke to Julian Assange's mother, Christine, from Brisbane in Australia, about the developments in her son's case.
I'm absolutely shocked. What happened to good old-fashioned British justice? What's transpired in the UK over the past few days with the UK police threatening to storm the Ecuadorian embassy has merely exposed the UK as nothing but a puppet state of the US. How far does the UK government want to bend over? They're already sacrificing their citizens through extradition to the unbalanced UK-US treaty, and now they're willing to work at the behest of the US government to silence the free press.
Well, this is the incredible scene outside of the Ecuador embassy where this diplomatic standoff is taking place. You've got media and protesters on one side of the street. You've got police ringing the Ecuador embassy on the other side. And all of this is happening in one of London's fanciest neighborhoods, right behind the world-famous Harrods department store. It's a political victory of sorts for Assange and his supporters, and it's a real mix of supporters that are out for him today. We have angry Ecuadorians who say the country is being bullied by Britain. We have free speech activists, and of course, those protesters wearing those masks made popular by the movie V for Vendetta, all of them voicing their support for Julian Assange. Take a listen to what some of those protesters told me earlier today.
We're not going to crack open the champagne just yet because it's still early doors. We can't start celebrating because it's not over. I would like for Julian Assange to be able to come out of here, get in a car, get in a plane and fly away into the sunset. To me, he represents David standing up to Goliath.
We're here to support the President of Korea. We're here to support Julian. Yeah, to support the freedom of expression for everybody.
Now, Assange supporters say they will stay here outside of the embassy, keeping vigil to ensure that British police do not go in to arrest Julian Assange inside the Ecuadorian embassy. But is it likely that police will go storming in? Legal experts tell us probably not, even though Britain does have a legal basis to strip the diplomatic status of the embassy and thereby send police in. That's a process that would take months of legal wrangling and would be heatedly contested by not just Ecuador but other countries as well. More likely, they say, more diplomacy, more negotiations, but who knows how long that will go on. The only thing that has changed today is that Julian Assange now has the permission to stay indefinitely inside the Ecuadorian embassy. He just can't step outside.